Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and it's Friday, and that means that Mountain Gazette's Kyle Frost is here to dig into his newsletter that comes out every Thursday. What's happening, Kyle?
Much, just waiting for this storm to hit in Colorado. It's been a very nice week of sunny trail running, but I'm ready to get back to actual winter.
I can tell you right now, it is dumping rain in Southern California, so it's on its way.
Yeah.
All right, man, we have a couple of newsletters to get caught up on, and I want to start this week. I know you wrote it last week about Stanley. We'll get to that. We'll chat on that a little bit at the end. But right now, let's talk about what you wrote about this week, which is the new legislation being introduced in Colorado, but could definitely have implications in other states. You're not just being a Colorado homer here. There's a proposed bill in Colorado that you wrote about that, if passed, would quadruple property taxes on short-term rentals and effectively move to make privately owned short-term rental properties on the same tax level as hotels. So in terms of property taxes, this is, of course, in response to the housing issues that exist in many mountain towns, exacerbated by COVID, all of those issues that have kind of culminated in this. Everything's incredibly cost prohibitive when it comes to affordable housing in these, I guess they're mostly ski towns, let's be honest. It's really where a lot of this is happening. So, but I guess to start, why is this initiative being seriously considered as something that would be helpful to the larger situation in these mountain communities?
Well, I mean, the stated goal is that, a higher taxes or decreases in the density of short-term rentals would increase the availability of long-term rentals and just pure real estate for locals. And so, like, it's not a new conversation about affordability in mountain towns, about the balance of Airbnbs and not enough room for seasonal workers and all that kind of thing. It is a pretty significant change. So if you go over 90 days, your tax rate basically jumps from like around 7% to 29%.
That's huge.
Which is massive.
Yeah.
And so there's a wide range of types of people that this would affect. So, I mean, you're going to hit the same people that have, their house and they're there 3/4 of the time, but they rent it out 1 week out of the month or on weekends or whatever it is. And you're also going to hit the people that, look at it as an investment and, Airbnb at 100% of the time, or they own 10 Airbnb properties or things like that, which obviously, aren't the most ideal for, housing stock. I think the big question is, will it work?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it feels like, is this just treating symptoms versus cause? I mean, not that you can, and I know the cause is probably not simple either, right? Is this an addressable situation?
I mean, the long story short is we don't know.
Right.
I did a lot of research trying to find demonstrable data that shows that when you decrease short-term rentals, it increases rental affordability and housing stock. And there's one study that was in Irvine, California, that they introduced regulations around short-term rentals and reduced rental prices by 3%, which that's the only thing I found. Like, that's great.
Right.
But, New York also did similar things a couple months ago, starting in September, that their new regulations essentially banned Airbnb. And there hasn't been a change in available housing or rental rates or things like that. I agree that there should be regulations on short-term rentals. Like, it's not great if your entire housing stock is all Airbnbs. But I think mountain towns are in a particularly challenging situation where these are incredibly desirable places to live. They are geographically constrained. There's typically a lot of zoning issues involved as well with building new properties and that kind of thing. So even if you do this, I'm not sure it's necessarily going to have the effect that we want or a large enough effect to matter. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I just look at the mountain towns, like you could probably sense my little bit of disdain for the way I read the opening. I just like, they're kind of Disneyland at this point, like for the non-outdoor crowd. I almost feel like it's just everybody now understands, oh, you got to go to these places, or I have a lot of money, so I want to buy a place there. And this just feels like, even if this works a little bit, isn't it almost like and again, I'm not speaking with any data points whatsoever. It just feels like a stay of execution. It's like at some point you have to let these things almost collapse on themselves and allow them to kind of rebound.
Yeah, I mean, I would take a little bit of a less pessimistic view. I don't want them to collapse.
I didn't say I wanted them to. Just saying.
I mean, but I think it's going to take a lot of, I mean, to be on trial and error, and it's
Yeah,
going to take like very specific moves to make them even reasonably balanced economies, right?
right,
Because the trend that we're heading towards is, okay, let's say these regulations price people out of the Airbnb market because they can't afford their mortgage because the property tax is so high. Great. Okay. They put it on the market. Who's going to buy it? Like that condo is still in Breckenridge or Frisco or
yeah, yeah.
Crested Butte or Steamboat or wherever
Or
it is.
Park City or
Park
Tahoe
City,
or
yeah, yeah.
Leavenworth or
That's right.
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
I did have to apologize. I need to apologize to the Mountain Gazette audience for writing too much Colorado centric stuff.
No,
But
look, it's a Colorado legislation, but like you said in the article, and like
yeah, it
this
affects.
is,
Yeah,
I'm
this
sure
is a
everyone everywhere is looking to see what happens with this because
yeah, yeah.
if it
This is a trial balloon.
works, yeah, yeah,
But so let's say, I mean, it goes in the market. You know, the same issue is going to be there. Like it's either going to get bought by someone that doesn't care, that has enough money to not care about the property
yeah,
taxes and just use it as a vacation home that they only visit, 2 weeks out of the year, which is most of Vail. You know,
yeah,
I, I think it's South Lake Tahoe that like 44% of homes are empty most of the year.
right,
Like this doesn't solve that problem. And when most of your housing stock is sitting empty, great. Like prices are just going to go up over time because that's what they do.
sure,
And, that's not increasing availability for seasonal workers and that kind of thing. We're not building a ton of new stuff. No one wants to densify mountain towns,
hmm
uh, even though that's probably one possible way to address this stuff is had deed restricted and more dense housing that's targeted at seasonal workers and locals and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a really challenging balancing act.
Yeah, I guess what I look at it as if I put myself in the shoes of an owner, like if I own one of these homes, it feels like a bit of overreach. Like, hey, well, it's my house. Let me do what I want with it. And at the same time, like, look, I gotta tell you, after raising 3 kids, like punitive kind of, consequences doesn't typically work. So
Mhm.
if the issue is like, hey, these things are just sitting empty, for example, and you mentioned this in the article too about vacancy taxes, that just kind of makes more sense to me because you can sense an opportunity in that. It's like, hey, you're gonna have, if you want to maintain your 7% tax rate, you got to fill up your place, right? Like go fill it up, and that might make more sense instead of saying, well, okay, I'll make all this money short-term Airbnb. It's like, well, I'll sign 6 months leases or something. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
create opportunity for people to kind of ease into this versus just, fuck you, high tax rate because you have a house here now. I don't know. It feels a little like, I guess this is I'm sure this is what people will be thinking about when they go to vote for this, I would imagine.
Yeah, and like I don't like, Vale's a perfect example, right? Of like
Yeah.
it's just a valley full of multi-million dollar houses
Yeah.
that are empty. And Vale, like you're not going to be able to change Vale unless you do something pretty drastic. I wrote
Yeah.
about the bighorn sheep and the Vale trying to build some affordable housing
hmm
a while ago, and that's one possible way to address things. But like most of the land in Vale is taken up by $5-6 million houses or more that are empty, and nothing you do is going to change that unless someone or municipalities take like a very strong stand about the type of community that they want to be
hmm
and say, hey, like we're going to tax you a shit ton if you're not living here.
Wow. All right. Well, you list 4 kind of potential outcomes of the situation. The first one is, the new regulations, lead to the short-term rentals, a sell-off of the short-term rentals, increase available housing supply. And I got to think that's hopefully what they're hoping for in this, right? That would be
That's
the
the
most
best case
desirable
scenario,
outcome.
is that there's more stock for long-term rentals, or rental prices go down, or in locals, people that are living in these places uh, by the real estate.
The other three you list, availability drops, hotel prices increase, particularly mountain towns where supply is constrained. Then you have owners that can afford the changes will rent just under the maximum days. Newly available supply gets snapped up by folks who have more than enough money to not care about tax rates. All of these things just sound more likely to me, based off of kind of like the history of like rich people in mountain towns. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, you take away, there's a lot of Airbnbs in mountain towns. I mean, some of them have quite stringent regulations already, but it is part of the, when you're calculating the tourism capacity, like it's part of the calculation.
Yeah.
And if that goes away, there's not that many hotels, in mountain towns, and there's prices are going to go up because demand goes up. That seems like a pretty likely scenario. And then, as far as renting under the number of days, like basically the cutoff here is 90 days, I believe.
Hmm.
So if you want to go to 89 days, I'm gonna rent in, December, January, February when everyone's skiing and, make as much money as I possibly can. And I'm not going to rent it the rest of the year.
I don't know, man. This is just a tough one. I just feel like this is just going to be one of those in 10 years, we'll be sitting here talking about like, yeah, I remember when ski towns used to make a lot of money. And now there's just ski resorts that people drive to every weekend.
Yeah. And, the price of skiing has gone up. I know, like, I'm not a Vail icon, like, these people are like the epitome of evil kind of person, but like, passes have both made skiing more affordable and
Right.
also, learning skiing and getting introduced to skiing is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
If you want to take your kid up and for a couple days a season instead of, buy a season pass for your whole family. If that continues to go up, if, housing continues to go up, if hotels continue to go up, just makes it harder to be out there. So
Yeah.
people aren't. And what happens then? Like, then when the numbers stop going up and to the right, and Vale starts seeing decreased skier visits, and Altera starts seeing decreased skier visits because stuff is so expensive. What happens to these towns then that have come to like rely on that? Maybe, I mean, I think the great question is do these towns need that level of tourism,
Hmm.
or is there going to be a correction to something that might be a more sustainable balance rather than more and more and more and more and more every year?
All right, let's move on, man. I guess, we'll have to keep an eye on this one. I'm sure I can't wait to hear. I know you're doing a mailbag next week for Mountain Gazette. So I'm really hoping between the Wolves and this one, you definitely get some feedback. We can maybe read a few things on the show the next time you're on. But last week you wrote about Stanley. So, which has been in the zeitgeist. I mean, probably last summer, last fall, when it really started to pick up steam. And, your newsletter tracking their ascent was kind of perfectly timed. At the same time, there was the Atlantic's Derek Thompson posted in one of an episode of his podcast about it. And then, of course, SNL made fun of the trend on last week's episode. So what was it that made you want to dig into the whole Stanley craze?
I mean, it's just always entertaining to see, an outdoors company all of a sudden reach the mainstream zeitgeist.
Critical mass.
Critical mass, yeah,
Yeah.
and be literally everywhere. I mean, I think it's an interesting story because it is like a story of successful reinvention and marketing.
Yeah.
The CEO of Stanley was the guy behind the Crocs resurgence a couple years ago,
Yep.
which likewise was like, what, like I thought we were done with Crocs, but now they're bigger than ever. And he came into Stanley and recognized that having that kind of greenish, military camper color
Yeah.
uh, wasn't that appealing outside of a very core outdoor consumer, and introduced colors and limited edition colors and worked with women influencers and that kind of thing.
Yeah. The whole
And
Mormon mom thing was incredibly fascinating.
oh
Like,
yeah,
just it's
and
so
just
smart too.
executed on that, and you know got lucky a little bit with the whole TikTok car on fire situation.
Yeah, that's right.
And, here we are. Although I will say, I wrote that whole article just kind of poking a little bit of fun at how ridiculous it was. But, since I've published that, there's been a whole thing about lead in the bottles.
Yeah, I wrote
So
that
people are
down.
sending me that now, and I'm like, I didn't know this hadn't happened
Well,
yet.
what's funny is that I found out the lead through the SNL sketch when I think it was Heidi Gardner. It was like, oh, mine tastes like lead or something, and I'm like, is there a thing with lead? And then I googled it. And I'm like, oh, it's that whole deal. And now Hydro Flask is, on their social media, like we pioneered the non-lead vacuum seal. I guess for the listener, if you're not familiar, it's part of the process to create the insulative properties of the vessel. They use lead for whatever reason, but it's all contained and sealed, and it does not leach into what you actually drink
Yeah.
from. But I remember I had
This isn't a Beethoven scenario where we're all gonna get, like, lead, right?
yeah. If you knew that and everyone's just drinking lead, I think we'd be hearing more about it. It reminds me when I was at Pro Bar, like it came out, and Pro Bar's the main binding agent for the bar was brown rice syrup, and it came out that there's arsenic in brown rice syrup. And then there was like a 2-week media storm about like, oh my God, you're eating arsenic.
Bananas or something like.
It's in everything. Like if you dig up dirt, there's arsenic, and that it's a naturally occurring, element or compound or whatever it is. And so it's just, this feels very akin to me. Like you have to like really fuck up your Stanley and then drink from it.
Yeah.
Apparently a lot for it to have any impact on your health whatsoever.
Well, it's just a reason for people to, throw away their Stanley cups and get another identical one.
Yeah. Yes. Well, because they're going to come out now probably with the non-lead version.
Oh yeah.
To try and keep it going. I do want to like I don't like that we keep saying Stanley Cups. It's like that should be like trademarked by the NHL. I hear Stanley Cup, I think of the Stanley Cup. I don't think of my drinking cup, but
I definitely confused a couple people when I told them what article I was writing about, and they're like, "Oh, that seems like a weird topic for you." Like,
Mountain Gazette. Oh, huh, weird.
Hockey, okay.
I do think that there's going to be a big crash coming because anytime you see any of these brands on these meteoric ascents, I was there a little bit of Timberland at the tail end of the yellow boot when that kind of rocket ship took up and getting there, and everyone was still kind of riding that high, and then the trend switched to sneakers and just fell off a cliff. And then I was thinking about the Vibram Five Fingers where they had that 18-month, 2009, 10 to 11, 12. Where I was actually working retail back then for a little while, and like in downtown Boston, and like just the most like city focused kind of stylistically city focused individuals coming in and just buying every color of Vibram Five Fingers and to wear around in like downtown Boston, and then everyone realized you're wearing toe shoes, and that trend fell off. I think it's probably gonna be something similar in the next few months here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the like mega hype will die down.
Yeah.
I do think it's enough of like a core purchase kind of thing. Like it's just always there. They're great for gifts. Like people are always looking for some random little thing to give for Christmas and
Sure.
birthdays
Right.
and stuff like that. And companies give them away as swag and that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. One of my favorite facts about the outdoors is, that Yeti makes more money selling drinkware than they do coolers, like $250 million more.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's a lot. That's
Yeah,
huge.
it's like I think it's like 950 million to 600 something million, and like that number has increased significantly in the last like five years. Like it's not like that kind of thing is going down. I have no idea. I haven't looked. Hydro Flask is kind of hard to take a look at because it's all kind of wrapped up in Helen of Troy, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit harder to get to. But if Yeti is also selling nearly $1 billion in cups, like I think Stanley's going to be okay.
I think the thing to focus on coming
I
up.
mean, they went from 75 million to 750 million.
Amazing. I feel
So
bad for their sales reps and the comps they have to make this year, to kind of their year-over-year sales. Good luck, guys,
I mean, on the other hand, I think the CEO is going to be out of there in like a year or two. Like,
I'd quit proactively.
Job accomplished. Like, I'm going to take my bonus and move
Exactly.
on to the next thing I'm going to reinvent. So
I'm not going to wait for this to level off at $1.50 or wherever they settle out, when it comes down off this high. They'll still be bigger than they were before, but not quite as big as they are now,
I'm going to peace out and go to, introduce a pink Coleman stove or something. Like,
I hear Solo Stove is hiring. Do you own a Stanley bottle? Do you have one? Do you have a Stanley?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah. I have an Algin that is pretty beat up and taped, and I use that a lot.
I'm not a straw guy, number one. Number two, I don't want a handle. I don't understand like the handle. Like if I sit there with my coffee mug, I'm fine. But like that's I'm okay with a
I also
bottle.
don't need hot. Like I don't really care about having hot stuff or anything like that ever. So like the
Yeah,
Nalgene is usually good for me.
yeah,
Uh, and I have like a small. I don't remember which brand it is. Like a small coffee one.
yeah. I have like a small hydro flask for like road trips or whatever. You want to fill it up with coffee or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, yeah, me too. But well, good on you, Stanley. All right, man. We can wrap it up there. So next week you're out. You're headed to Blister Summit.
I am. Yeah.
That's exciting.
I am excited to. I haven't been to Crested Butte in a while, so that'll be fun. And check out a bunch of new ski gear and talk to
Get
some interesting people and see
get
what's going
Cody
on.
Townsend's autograph.
Hey, man, like
Get
I don't
it.
know. Cody talks about. I'm for sure going to talk to Cody, but
Heck yeah.
dude's one of the most interesting people in the outdoor industry right
He
now.
really is. And I usually like really kind of shudder at most outdoor athletic personalities, not because they're not great people, because it's like, what great. I'm sure you had an interesting life, but he really makes it. He's an interesting interview when he speaks on camera. He owns it. I definitely, I'm a fan of the 50. Yeah, I'm all in on Cody for sure. Doing anything fun this weekend before you head to the summit?
I don't know. It's supposed to snow a bunch, so it's the constant Colorado calculation of how far am I willing to drive and how much traffic am I willing to deal with.
All right, that's the show for today. But before you click us off, please open up the podcast app where you are listening and tap the follow button to subscribe to The Rock Fight, and also leave us a 5-star review. Big thank you to Kyle for coming on the show today. You can subscribe to his newsletter and the Mountain Gazette by hitting the links in the show notes. Also, come back tomorrow as Mountain Gazette's Mike Rogie will be filling in for Justin Hausman, who's out on vacation this week. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out is my guy and yours, Chris DeMakes, with the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight.